So welcome everyone. My name's Michael Thiele. I help coordinate Grazing Club events in Manitoba and sometimes in Saskatchewan from those tuning in from Saskatchewan. And we're happy to have anyone from anywhere Zoom in and participate. So it's great. We've got, I think, people from all across the prairies. So that's wonderful. So the grazing clubs are funded by Ducks Unlimited, and Ducks has understood the link between agriculture and wildlife habitats, and have been consistent funders of grazing club events for over 20 years. And so, regardless of where you are on the prairies or across Canada, if you talk to your local duck staff, please, just mention that you appreciate what Ducks is doing with the grazing clubs, and maybe mention that there's still possibilities that grazing clubs could spread to other parts of the prairies. So give them a gentle nudge there to maybe think about that for Saskatchewan and Alberta. And just another quick mention that, Ducks does have grazing management programs to help with things like water systems, fencing, forage establishment, the things we're going to talk about over the next few weeks in most of the provinces. So take advantage of that funding. I'm going to record this webinar this evening, and it's going to be posted on the Manitoba Grazing Club's YouTube channel. Check out that channel. We have a couple of years worth of videos on different topics, and there may be something worth a quick viewing. So tonight we're going to talk about livestock watering systems, and Cameron Hodgins, this is his good idea. I think an excellent idea to do a series over the next few weeks here and talk about, like I said, water systems, fencing, and forage establishments, and talk to some producers doing these things, and then have opportunity for questions and discussions. So two options here. If you want to ask a question at any time, just turn your mic on and ask the question. I think that's probably best. And you could also, if you don't want to do that, just type the question in the chat box, and Cameron and I can make sure that we read out the questions, and we'll have lots of time for questions and discussions. So quick agenda. Cameron's going to say a few words about the Woodworth Grazing Club. Then Chris Rutledge and Bill Alexander, and have to give them a big thanks for being willing to do this. They're going to talk about some of the work they've done with their own livestock watering systems, why and what they did, and then answer questions and have a discussion. Then finally, Ryan Kennart from the Assiniboine West Watershed District will talk about funding opportunities. So some of this may not apply specifically to you because you're outside of this particular watershed, but be aware that there's probably never been more funding available for making changes on your farms. For example, the On-Farm Climate Action Fund money from the federal government, and it's being delivered across Canada on the prairies, a lot of it by the watersheds. And there's three pillars. One's the improved grazing. The other one's nitrogen fertilizer. The third is cover crops. So if you're thinking about doing any of those, take advantage of this opportunity, make a plan, and do something in 2023. So with that, welcome, and I'm going to turn it over to Cameron, and he's going to talk about the Woodworth Grazing Club.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Michael for helping put this together, and thanks everyone for showing up. And I guess the idea behind this was specifically on the water systems. These are two guys that I look to if I need help with something. Bill and his dad, Robert, can kind of make something out of nothing, and Chris is kind of a deep thinker and always analyzing things. So let's kind of seek these two guys out specifically to talk about these things. And I truly believe we got a pretty good thing around here, and it's thanks to Robert Alexander and Pat Waller, two big parts of keeping this grazing club going. And Pat's in Mexico and Robert's over there in Kenton. And yeah, so hopefully it's going to be a good evening, and don't be shy. And I guess this came to, sorry, my thing's not, where's my doing here? There we go. So just kind of what Michael said, like there's so many programs out there for funding, and We'd just like to highlight, the watershed district, our grazing club and Michael's grazing clubs, and the funding. If you want to do something, get a hold of your watershed district. I'm just going to quickly touch on our grazing club. We're right there, kind of our hubs in Lenore. If you're ever driving by, stop in and drive through Lenore and see the sights.
I think we're opening up an office here.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we typically do at our grazing club, we have a winter meeting in March, April, discuss a few different topics and ideas annually. Then we usually have a summer tour, get together, go tour different projects. And then we've done in the past few years is have a fall tour. And this year we were lucky enough to head over to Rapid City Country, and some of those guys were graciously hosted us and got to meet some new people and share some different ideas. And it was a good time. But now we'll just get into what everyone's here for. This is Bill Alexander. He's kind of got, backhoes and cows. And so he brings a unique perspective to implementing some of these water systems, both on his place and other places. All right, Bill, turn it over to you and I'll just keep moving.
So yeah, we took over working with mom, dad, and took over the cow calf operation. And then we started a small construction business with backhoe and dump trucks and stuff like that. About 125 cow calf pairs. Yeah. So what we're looking for is different watering systems. Is that?
There's your shallow well system. Sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, we usually use shallow wells is what we have been using. We've tried a couple of different things, tried a dugout system. Apparently I'm not very good with solar. I need Cameron and Chris to come and explain it to me a lot better and make that work. And so we use the shallow wells and off-site or whatever water troughs. Thank you. Sorry, that's all right. Water troughs at shallow wells, more or less. In the picture here, we got a fill switch, pump up, pump down. So we run a fill switch in the trough to turn the pump on, but we run a backup system of a fill switch down the well to prevent burning the pump dry. And we're doing that. We also run alleyways, so we're only utilizing 2 or 3 sites. That's basically what we do for different types of water systems as of right now. This was the picture you're seeing is the failed attempt at Billy was solar. That was a dugout that done 3 Mays ago.
How many gallons of water you got there then?
I have no idea.
What makes it move?
There was a lot more last year.
But it held up through the drought, right?
Yes, it dropped down. There's probably only about 4 feet of water in it from being about 8 feet through the drought. I didn't utilize it last year at all. We were having to use a gas pump and fill a tank, and I do that twice a day, just to.
So it's up stopping on the desk. You have a unique advantage where you know someone who.
Yes, we have somebody that can locate water generally underground. He uses an app on his phone usually.
Oh.
And yeah, it's actually usually pretty darn accurate. I found usually locate a stream someplace.
Or phone lines in the back.
I found the odd phone line, yeah. Not out there though.
Here's the bridge.
Yeah, that was a repurposed piece of steel from something else.
Got fuel up, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. So yeah, this is the source is the red thing out in the dugout. That's the 12-volt pump. And then the back was the gas pump.
Sure, is that 12 or 24 volt?
Well, it's 12, or at least well, I had it hooked up. Maybe that's why it wasn't working properly. Yeah, so we were filling a 1,200 gallon tank and a 500 gallon water trough. But like I said, that didn't seem to keep up, so I was going up twice a day and running the gas pump. Not too bad, but we've abandoned this and went with a pipeline plow and put in a watering spot So cows only walk about 3/4 of a mile at the most. From the furthest point, maybe a half. We got funding from Ryan and Jeff, and they came out and we put that 1.5 inch pipe. We go about 800 meters. About right, went up about 30 feet of rise, something like that. Towards the thing.
And that's a pressure system.
Then we use a pressure system to run that system.
Right.
We have it's a 1/2 horse, 3/4 horse pressure system. And it pumps the water up there, fills the 1200 water or tank, which fills the water trough. There's the picture right there. We said we have alleyways coming to that from different directions, and hopefully more alleys added this summer. There's a plow. So we went about 800 meters up to that site. We also went from the main well across the road and put another site over there for a north farm.
Sorry, Bill, you're behind.
That's the water trough system. The board is there, so we prevent getting shocks.
What's that truck made of?
That is no fuel tank. With support. Yeah, we will fit inside that. And that is the water tank upside down. If you do not leave water in it for the winter, it will blow away. Just a little heads up on that one.
That's how the tank's.
That's the way the tank is supposed to sit. It's like that. Yes. And there is a float and valve inside the tank to shut off the flow from the pressure system. And then it's an open valve running into the trough.
But your own design of it for that float. We're gonna take a quick break.
So we were talking about using alleyways and stuff like that when we were for cattle access to water. That seems to allow us to not have to maintain as many sites. And we have the benefit of having shore power or grid power, whatever you want to call it, at these locations, so we can use don't have to rely on gas pumps or solar. It really works out a lot better for us. I know we've had another benefit of it is that, like Dad's been doing this with the rotational grazing with the alleyways for so many years. We've just going to keep tweaking a little bit here and there. So that's been a really great benefit for that.
I think it was.
Okay.
Just keep.
That's an upside down water tank. That's
Why is it upside down?
It's upside down because we do not leave enough water in it over the course of the winter, which therefore it seemed to blow away in some of these blustery days.
It didn't break anything with Blue?
I haven't looked. That's as close as I got to it. We'll deal with that in the spring. So, and see the plowed in line is still attached to it. Like I said, where that line goes inside of the tank, that's where the float and valve and everything is.
So what about didn't you do some fancy engineering for the?
Yeah, that went from we were over at the
Your solar system, yeah?
no this Steve Canyon, kind of his idea on his
Okay.
floats and shutoffs.
Yeah.
With a little red and white ball and some floats and some lever actions.
Yeah.
It seemed to work, but it does leak. It needs to be refined a little bit better. It will come along though. Next spring's another year. Well, we got to keep working at it.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah,
The whole point of it.
there's always stuff that needs to be fixed.
It's not just it's improved.
Improved and or fixed. Yes.
So the idea behind having the elevated tank, Bill, what was the purpose of that?
The elevated tank, so then there'd be enough gravity feed to fill that trough faster when there's about 100 cows trying to drink at once. give it a little bit more head pressure. And that would just try to increase the watering at the same time and not allowing that trough to get emptied. Because that does happen and then calves inside of it. And that's never fun.
Clusters.
Yeah.
And you built this on a little bit of a hill, eh?
This is on a bit of a hill for drainage purposes. So we don't end up with that swampy area around the drinker, which we still end up with a swampy area, but not nearly as bad as it can be. There's always running over and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If you do that. That's this system has worked out well. Like I said, that's pretty happy with this. This is where this one's working.
Maybe this is a good time to just pause, and if there's anyone who wants to ask a question, just go ahead on pause or on mute and ask your question for Bill, or throw it in the chat and I can just read it out. I had a question, Bill. How wide do you make your alleys?
Well, I'm using Dad's existing alleys, so I believe they're probably in that 30 to 40 feet.
Yeah, so plenty of room to drive a
Plenty of-
half ton through them, and
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And I'd recommend making all gates a lot larger than they are. That's always an issue. Yes. Yeah, the alleyways, like I said, generally speaking, they're in that 30 feet. Get too wide and the cows get turning around and stuff. They don't seem to travel as well
Okay,
if we're trying to move them. But usually they just follow and away they go.
right.
Yeah.
Question, anyone?
We'll move on then. Michael?
Yep.
Okay. Chris, you might have to move closer here. So this is Chris Rutledge. He's kind of he's got crops and cows and he's always figuring something. So I'll let him take over now. You can click through there at your own.
Okay. Hello, I'm Chris. Farm northwest of Lenore. Run 270 cows and grain farm about 2,400 acres, and we do a bit of custom feeding in our feedlot. Came back to the farm. Geez, I don't know. I was 2000, right before BSC. So started off just wonderful, and then learned to adjust and accommodate and keep going from there. And these pictures that we'll have here, none of them are mine because I don't take pictures, and so. These are all stock pictures. That isn't our feedlot. That is much better built and so on. How do you get down from here?
Push down.
Oh, as simple as that. One of the things we've done, we have increased our cow herd, and one of the things we have done is we were able, my wife and I were able to purchase Pat Waller's cows and rent his land. And one of the major benefits from that is learning from Pat different ideas. And main thing is a lot of different watering ideas, and it's been a big learning experience due to challenges with the river, with head height or depth of water, I guess you can say, like pumping up the riverbank as a major challenge at times, especially last year when it was the year before when it was so dry. That was a major challenge, and so Pat's got some different ideas, and I've had some ideas at home, and we've implemented a few different ones, and we've kind of made it work from there. We have a winter watering system coming out of a dugout into a dry or a wet well. Pumping from there. We have summer solar systems, Honda pumps, or sorry, I should say pumps. I'm not just stuck to Hondas, but I use a 2-inch Honda pump at home. But down in the valley, Pat, we use a lot of 3/4 Power Fist. I think they are pumps down there. So, and some of those watering systems are actually in combination too, and they were fantastic. So that's what we've done there.
Well, Chris, do you find that the 3/4 pump fills the troughs fast enough for you? If you're there when the cows are.
No, but most of our watering systems, be it in the valley or up top, my biggest thing with watering systems, if you're going to use a pump, is to have a holding tank.
Enough for the whole day's work?
The whole day's worth, yeah. The bigger the better, because not only I'd like to have 2 or 3 days worth so that I don't have to be there every single day to check on the cows or pump the water. I like to do it every 3 days. So if you're busy haying or seeding or harvest or spraying or whatever, it's not a make or break to get there every single day kind of thing. And it kind of leaves room for breakdowns.
Yeah.
Whether it be a bad battery or a pill switch or whatever have you, there's a bit of lead time there. That's kind of one of the things I like to see.
So you'd be looking at 2,000-3,000 gallons.
We're most of them right now are anywhere from 8 to 1,500 gallons worth of tanks pump or going into the troughs.
Yeah.
But I'd like to increase all.
Yeah.
But then again, there goes your challenge. It's just finding what tanks you have around the farm. So you just make use of even some bugger tanks, flip them upside down, and use the stuff that's broken, use it, put it on top, kind of thing. But challenges with that is that there's some of them are white tanks, so then you get a bit of algae. So either you tarp the tank to stop the algae, or throw some jabbers, yeah, whatever have you. Just try to make something work. But yeah, I'm trying to get bigger and bigger tanks in most of the spots, and I'd really like to toy around with the idea of going to somebody like Tundra or whatever and getting those 15,000 gallon tanks and putting them at each dugout and putting a 2-inch Honda there. And the big idea with that I learned from Pat is that if you don't got time, you go around and you fill up a three-quarter pump, you fill up with gas and you leave. Let it pump until it's running out of fuel. And so when you go to a 2-inch, you got to make sure you don't, like I usually stick around because it's 2,000 gallons on 2-inch pump is only 15 minutes. Unless the cows are drinking, but still, you know, if it's gravity feeding out of that tank, they can only drink it so fast, right? Yeah. There's the man right there, all the way down in Mexico, but he is actually here sometimes. One thing I will say that Pat has always taught me there is he uses cam filters or not cam couplers, cam shafter. What do you want to call them? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Cam lock fittings and all that on everything. I know it adds a little bit of cost to it, but man, oh man, does it make a life a lot simpler if you put a cam lock on your float. So if it jams up with algae or something like that, it's a quick little pull off, and then you can clean it out and put it back together instead of trying to thread the threads back together and stuff like that. It just makes, if you just use 3 or 4 times the amount of cam locks on hoses going into your troughs, out of your troughs, everywhere, just use your cam locks, and it makes life just so much simpler.
All different sizes,
All different sizes, just to complicate things. But
How do you find these floats?
Those floats are hit and miss with me. Sometimes those orange floats work 100. I get some of them are working 100%, and I've had 2 or 3 in the last year that all of a sudden the glue's let go, and now they're starting to waterlog, and I'm having to get new floats.
2 different things I found that really make that helpful. One is a bar, so you put it on top of that. The other is a tiger torch.
A tiger torch might melt them,
Yeah.
man.
So it looks like Pat's got a tea there, Chris. Explain that, or maybe Pat can come on. And
Yeah, Pat, do you mind coming on if you could all the way from Mexico there and tell us what that tea is about?
Tell him what the tea's about, he says.
Rich.
About the tea and the
tea?
lime.
Ask them what they want to know.
Oh, sorry.
Can you see the tea
and
by
the
the
lime-
float there, Pat?
I think we doubled the input, wasn't it, Chris? Like, is there not 2 valves there? There is, yes.
Yeah.
If you're-
That
if
was
they're
double
drinking
double.
out of a
I think that's
smaller
on that yellow
trough.
trough.
Yeah,
That's the yellow trough coming out of the river there, I think, right? And it's
right.
what Pat did there was we had a solar system, or he had a solar system coming out of the river. But the year that it was getting really low there, the solar was wearing on the batteries, trying to pump that much head height. So we put another 800 gallon tank beside that, and we pump with a 3/4 inch pump to fill that tank. And it also feeds into the same trough there, and that way it's got 2 different water sources coming in at once. So it works very well, that one there. I really like that one. The only thing I would change there is maybe just tank size. It's going to a bigger tank just to give a little more grace for bugger ups.
what about the?
Right. For the number of cows you had, Chris, there was the tank was maybe the trough was maybe a little undersized, and we put 2 Gallagher valves in so it would feed it twice as fast.
Exactly. Yeah.
If 40 cows came to drink, it would keep up to 300 gallons. That's
Right. Yeah. yeah, like matching your solar panels, your pump, your batteries, your tank, everything to the size of the herd, I guess is kind of key sometimes too, right?
The further the river went down, the harder, the longer it took to pump the water.
Yeah, a little more, and a lot more
And
strain on
like-
your batteries too, right? Your solar couldn't keep up.
40 feet, and it was fairly slow. So that's why, why you did the other.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
No, it's all good, Pat. We're gonna draw on you a lot.
Not for his hole in the river in the winter.
No, I don't know
Didn't he
about
draw?
that.
I thought them talking about that.
No, he wouldn't use that in the winter time.
Oh, I thought, well, that's what the drain was in there.
Oh, you mean the bottom of the pump here?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Cameron mentioned this, like, and you'll see in that picture there. What Pat's done there also on the drain plug of that 3/4 inch pump, he put a valve on there, so you don't have to take the bung out if it gets to be questionable for temperature. And what we'll do is we'll start the pump, get it priming, and get it pumping water, and then, like I say, when we usually fill the tank full of fuel and walk away. So when you go to walk away, you take that valve and you crack it open just a hair, enough to make it spray out, so that when it stops pumping or runs out of fuel, then at least that hose will drain back and you'll drain your crank. You drain your pump out so that it doesn't freeze and crack your crankcase there. That was Pat's idea on that one, which was really good. There's just a standard
Trough.
trough. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Currently I don't have any, I'm not pumping out of any sloughs. I'm all dugouts, and I did one this year, I guess, or last year where I fenced it off. And I cleaned it out, I guess, first, because when it was getting so dry, I wanted the dugout to last. So we cleaned the dugout out, fenced it off, and then that dugout's been, and it was a say, I'm gonna call it a poor dugout if you're watering or cows are walking in it. But since it's been fenced off and the cows weren't touching it, that's been a saving grace. It saves the water there, it doesn't murky it up, filled in with mud, and I think that dugout's gonna last a long time. See there, and there's one of those, that's the yellow water trough that we're pumping out of the river into one of them, and at times we can kind of challenge it, I guess you say, with how many head we have in there. But if you're doubling up I think there is 2 hoses maybe in that one, or you could say there was anyways. There's one with solar, and another hose was coming in off this 800-gallon tank, and it's feeding into that, which helps with the clusters of cows coming in at times.
So the 800-gallon tank, you fill it with the 3/4 inch water pump?
Yep.
And it still uses the gallon valve.
Yep.
To fill the trough.
Exactly. Yeah, you bet.
With gravity feed, that works all right?
Yep, no problems whatsoever. Yeah. Most of I used to know, I know for sure my winter watering system is a 24 volt system instead of a 12 volt. And I've just been told that the 4.6s have got a lot more kick to get up and get going than in the wintertime, as compared to the 12 volt system. One thing I will say here, but I'm always worried about something buggering up, whether it be batteries or the pump or whatever have you. Sometimes you get weaker batteries, and if you're not going in right into your box and checking to see if your batteries are keeping up and stuff like that. Cameron mentioned there last week that he's running a turbine, like a wind turbine. It's kind of nice to have backups, whether it be solar or, or multiple backups, so that make sure everything's running. Because like I said, when I'm kind of running silly sometimes there, you just don't get to your cows every day or every second day. Sometimes it's 3 to 4 days. So it's nice to have backups to make sure everything's gonna be good when you're not there. That's more or less like this, I guess, the well that we have for a winter watering system. Like the dugout's dug, and then we have a trench going across to that well, pipe coming out of that top right into a insulated trough. And it's a 5-hole trough, I guess, insulated trough, and we usually winter about 110 cows, 120 cows type thing off of that, and it's works extremely well, which allows us to bale graze, corn graze, swath graze, all that sort of thing. We can start calving. We're just starting to calve here now, but our cows will not see the corrals until 2 weeks beforehand, when they need to be scour guard, and after that they stay out in the field.
That's big times though.
What's that?
That's Michael, that's the end of Chris's presentation. Is there any questions specifically for Chris? I've got a few that we'll get into here shortly if there's none, but it'd be great to hear from somebody.
Yep. So anyone with a question, go ahead or type it in the chat. There's a lot of experience there between the three, Cameron, Chris, and Bill. So take
Usually
advantage of it.
experience is doing something wrong and learning from it.
Exactly. Well,
That's
yeah,
how
that's
we've usually
yeah,
done most of ours.
that's how it works. Yeah.
One thing I will say, I guess, as I would want to mention about that pasture plow, I think it's fantastic. One thing we've learned through the years is when we plowed that line in, it was, I should say, our well is at the north end of our pasture, pumps into a tank that's on top of an old grain truck, and then gravity feeds back to the other end of the quarter section at the south end. When we did the pasture plow and took it across, we hit some rocks and whatever have you. So our level in the ground isn't perfectly level. It's you got your up and down because of rocks and so on and so forth. The first few years, we'd use the solar, fill the tank, and it would gravity feed to the tank or the trough by the road there. But we'd always end up with airlocks in it. So our very first go in the springtime, we usually take a Honda pump, fill that tank, get our cam lock is on there, like what Pat has shown us there, and we push it through with the trough or the Honda pump to begin with. That whole quarter section line that we push it through, and when you're pushing that water through with force, it pushes all the air out, and then we never have a problem again the rest of the summer with airlocks. So that's one little tip I've used, and it's cured that right to begin with. So that's kind of a neat thing.
Hold that on, but we'll move on.
So you blow your lines all out in the winter then?
Yep. Yeah, either whether they're above ground or below ground, I use either my tandem grain truck or one of my semis there, and just hook up an air line and blow the lines out, and that way there's no chance of, and then leave the lines open, like each end open after that.
Okay. Yeah. Let's ask that question. I don't blow on that.
No problems. Really?
Well, I will this year. Alex said. Used to blow them out.
So while these guys are thinking, I'm going to give them a couple questions, Michael.
Okay, go ahead.
The benefits and challenges and advice you get. You guys think about that. I'll just talk about quickly. So this is one system we kind of made up a few years ago, and it's kind of similar to what Chris and Bill talked about, is having a tank that gravity feeds into a trough. And what I did was I put a one-way valve in the T. So when the trough is demanding water, the solar pump will pump right into the trough and allow that not to backflow back into the pump. And it's portable, but I'm going to call it semi-portable because it's not that quick to move.
What do you got out in the water there?
That's an old sprayer bar. I welded a chunk of sucker rod onto it so I can push it out without getting too wet.
Have a bridge to put in like I had.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't have a sweet bridge. And then the next one here, this is a off-site portable system that it's small enough. It's small enough to pull with the quad or side by side, but you can just see on the one picture on the right hand side that there's that wind generator there, and we've kind of put those on our systems now, and it seemed to really don't probably notice too much of a difference in the summertime, but in October, that extended grazing, it's not sucking those batteries down. It's maintaining that extended grazing a little bit longer without having to worry about like what Chris was talking about there.
Now, Cameron, could you use that solar without the solar?
I think so. I think if the solar unhooked and there was enough wind, there were some days where
Summertime or anytime?
anytime,
Really?
if there was no wind,
I think that might be an option to go with.
So why isn't there more of them out there?
I think
They're there.
Is it a cost point right now?
it's a cost point, but I mean, we hooked that up in tandem with a winter water system, the drain back bowl, and just utilize the windmill and the water system just pumping in the drain back bowl. It worked out well enough.
Now, how many cows are you watering off something like this?
Oh, there was over 200 there on one of those this year.
Without a tank?
Yeah, pumping straight in.
Wow.
But there wasn't that much head pressure on. Like, right, it was only lifting
Because you're at the
maybe
slough.
8 feet. Yeah.
Okay.
Or dugout, sewer dugout. But the
That's
last
impressive.
couple of years, I've had to add on. Some electrician can probably tell me. They're adding on 20 or 30 feet of cord and
Oh, yeah.
hose to get out further into that slough or dugout to get
More resistance.
depth of water. Yeah.
Yeah, more resistance, more drain on the battery.
And this year I've had a lot of problems with LJ wrecking impellers on pumps.
Oh, yeah.
So if anyone's got any sweet ideas on how to do that, there was 2 within a month that we had to fix up.
Oh, yeah, you had that photo too of the oil there, right?
Yeah, we'll go on. I'm gonna get you
Okay.
2 to answer these questions. So we're gonna grill our experts right now. So sorry, Sarah's got a question here. Do you have any solutions for keeping troughs from getting algae in them?
Let them run over. No. Sorry. I don't.
You mentioned one, putting a little bit of Javix in there.
Yeah, like mine's, when you're watering like 100 cows on it, it seems to stay clean as long as you're using it. It's when you're not, like, when you let it sit for.
Yeah, it's stagnant water, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If your trop is getting drank almost fully and then recharge, it's not gonna be. That's the only thing we have, I guess, is that it's not so big that it's holding water for too long.
Yeah, like I said, if you run a smaller trough, I think that's why you'd run a smaller trough and use it.
Maybe to get more turnover, yeah.
Yeah. But then you don't have then you're having to be there more often to fill that trough.
Yep.
And that's.
I think if anyone's got any answers for Sarah in the audience, don't be afraid to share them in the chat or speak
Yeah,
up.
there's a couple in the chat. Lynn saying uses chlorine pucks,
No, yeah, yep.
and Ryan saying meters in a little bit of hydrogen peroxide.
Yep.
I've heard guys trying like just a piece of copper pipe in the bottom of the trough. I'm not sure that works long term, but so I don't know if anyone's tried that.
I didn't know the hydrogen peroxide would work on algae. I thought that was just for iron. Didn't realize that. Well, I use 4 6-volt batteries instead of not 2 12s. That goes back to me, was going back to Carl Dredger when he was doing Keln water systems there, and he always told me it was for the winter watering system is for the 4 6s instead of the 2 12s. It just gives you more what's the electrical word? More jump off the start for the kick the pump.
More amps probably.
More amps or torque right off the start there to pump it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of the 2 12s. All my summer watering systems are all 2 12s instead of the 4 6s.
I guess that's one thing I would have to say is if you're figure out what you're gonna go with and go with that if you're gonna have multiple solar systems. So you can plug and play, and basically if one's down, you can make 2
Yeah, parts.
amp hours, Lynn says.
Yep.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There's lots of people out there that we'll say that, but we're not the experts on that. So ask your what would you call it? Supplier or dealer
Yeah.
on what's best for your system.
Actually, yeah, electricians know.
All right, so you 2 experts.
Benefits?
What are the benefits of using offsite water systems? Talk loud in the mic.
One benefit I see is just certainly a reduction in foot rot. That's for darn sure. Is your cattle aren't wading into that mud all the time. And I guess another one would be you keeping your dugouts or your sloughs, whatever, in better condition. They're not gonna that dugout. If you get it cleaned out, it costs you $1,500 to $3,000 depending on the size of it to clean it out. Well, you're not gonna have to do it very often if it's fenced off. It's gonna stay nice and good.
Yeah, the last 2 years, went in lots of those little dugouts that have been there forever.
Yeah.
They're all just slipped to breathe in.
Yeah.
And that's because cows have been going in and stuff like that, and they haven't cleaned up feeders, so that doesn't help.
All right.
The streams all plugged up and everything like that. The cows will get the benefit of the clean water. Like when the water dugouts are full, you don't notice how dirty that water is.
Oh yes.
It's when they get low, and it's pretty bad.
Yeah, you don't want to be sucking the bottom through the pump, I guess is and that may
Yeah,
be
right.
what Cam was mentioning about blowing up pumps is you may be like just sucking off the bottom and pushing too much like loon shit through the pump.
That was the idea behind the bridge and that dugout that I had.
Yeah,
Keep it to-
right.
So you weighted it to keep it down a couple feet. They had it so it would be tied up and stay off the bottom too.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think Cameron with the sprayer bar, same idea, is to keep the intake from being on the bottom. Because that's when you get all your grasses and your sleeves, it'll plug up your pump and make it a nightmare. That's what it does.
Yeah, like I guess mine was, there was enough algae in that, in the water source, it was being sucked in underneath and going up gumming up the impeller itself. I've sucked up gravel and stuff too, because it's fallen to the bottom, but
Actually, that's when, like, in a former life of doing other things, a trash pump will put that through. They're a lot
Yeah.
more money, but you can pump just with anything you want with a trash pump.
yeah.
Yeah,
They're
good
a lot
point.
more money.
But just talking about keeping the cattle out, like I know not last year, 2 years
2 years
ago
ago.
during the drought, just I think we were moving our water system fairly often, but to get 2 or 3 more days of watering just because we're pumping it out of it and not letting the cows in it made a bit of a difference, especially when we're trying to get every bit of grass we could.
Now, do you think I think mine will always go back to that. And it makes sure you can handle and move your cattle that much easier too, because they're always going back to that offsite system.
Yeah.
And that's your central point for making that move.
I guarantee there would have been 25 to 30% more dugouts out there would have considered dried up or buggered
Well,
if you didn't have them fenced by that point in time, eh? Because it is quite a difference.
don't get me wrong, cows anything goes if you got a panic situation.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, yeah.
Lynn's just saying here she was always told to, sorry, maybe assuming they were always told to draw water about 3 feet below the surface. That's probably good advice, Lynn, but I guess sometimes like I don't know, in our part of the world,
You only got 3 feet.
there's 3 feet's the deepest spot. So
Yeah.
we're I mean, if we had a good neighbor with a good backhoe, yeah, we could make that deeper. Alan's asking how tall that windmill is. It's probably about almost 3 of me, Alan. So what, about 15 feet off the ground? All right, next question here for these crew. Why did it not change?
Yeah, I would just add in there, Cam, that when we're talking about benefits is that, fundamentally having a good water system is probably the most critical factor to good grazing management. And many times it's probably the limiting factor to being able to implement a good grazing plan is, having good water is going to always kind of tie your hands if you don't have it.
Yeah, exactly. It's something to invest in, and it really came to light
Yeah.
2 years ago on where and what we needed to do. And I mean, I don't know if I got a picture here, but I got a picture and I was watering cows in December, pumping out of a dugout, and it got pretty low pretty fast. And it was, yeah.
Made everybody pucker up pretty quick.
Yeah. Like, and kudos to those, I guess, our parents who managed through the 80s, and you hear some of their stories from,
Yeah.
The land the 3 of us are on, and it's really scary. And I think I don't say you didn't really believe it, but one dry season really kind of putting multiple years like that year together would be,
Yeah, 2 or 3 and 88, 89 and all them, and geez, almighty.
yeah.
It's scary.
It makes you value the time that you have to go and do other things. That you spend all your time trying to water cows.
Yeah. All right, challenges there, fellas. And it's same thing. Don't be afraid to put something in the chat, because I think we've all had challenges, because we all think, oh, this is just going to be, as Chris says, tickety boo, and it'll work great.
What's your challenges, Billy?
Making sure that stupid thing works.
Yeah.
The pressure system going down, the well running out of water, which that's a normal thing.
Yep.
Because the pressure system or the float didn't stick.
Yeah,
stop,
and you run dry.
run the well dry. Just having to be there to check it all the time. That's a big thing I found. And knowing where to look for the funding stuff. That's been a challenge, right?
Yeah.
And guys like Cameron usually are very good about that. He's on the back road on top of the big hill, hey, what about this and what about that? And it really helps solve a lot of your problems, or my problems. That's. What were we on, challenges?
Yeah,
Challenges of the
yeah.
water system.
The challenge is to get away from Canada once we get talking about it.
My main challenges, I guess, when we first started with it was just like solar was good, but maybe it wasn't where it is now. And so, like, you know, and what we've learned from, I guess, you know, keep your battery pulls clean, and you know, it's just mechanical things, I guess, is what I'm gonna say. But now it's like it's definitely gotten better, and I like what Pat and I have been doing is having piggybacking systems, I guess I'm gonna call it, that we have two systems working into one trough, and then that way, if the solar goes down, you got your other trough or your other tank, you know, piggybacking on it, or vice versa. That's my challenge, and I guess the other big one, obviously, was what Billy touched on. There was cost of it and where to find funding, but that's where we lean on Cameron pretty hard, and he shows us where they are, and we try to apply for them. So it's, and I guess the third one, I guess, would be now that I'm dealing with the river down there, is on dry years is the lift capabilities, because last year when we could just about walk across the river in places, it was the lift capability of being able to lift it that far. It took a lot of juice out of those batteries, but that's the challenges. But there's the benefits far outweigh the challenges.
I guess there's the other challenge, is the mindset of getting away from using a gun. Because that was the way it was always done, right?
Yep.
And we've had the benefit of it being this way for us already,
Yeah.
but getting away from the mindset of changing that.
Yeah. It's always going to make change. Yeah.
Change can be hard. So that's a big thing.
Yeah, I guess one of the biggest challenges for me, and I always think I'll do it, is have a backup plan pretty easy. Like, we got most of our water sites fenced off, but I've always think I should just go and fence in the water even 15 feet, that if the water system goes down, I can just open a gate versus have to try and set up a system and let cows in and get trampled by cows and try not to get shocked.
Or if you're at work, then it's not a desperate thing. You know, you can get Lisa to open a gate, and then away we go, right?
Yeah, I usually think something will take 15 minutes and it takes an hour and a half. I'm pretty glad at that.
It's good marital advice, right?
Well, that's where the 2-inch pump is the backup.
It's a
plan.
good backup. Yeah.
Like, so if it's sitting there ready to go.
The one thing that you'd be surprised, like I wouldn't, I had a hard time believing in when Pat always said that, you know, a 3/4 inch pump will go a long ways, and it's surprising what it'll do. And the good thing about the 3/4 is you can carry that thing like a suitcase, just grab it and run, because they're a lot lighter and they're easy to carry around and easy to hook up. That's what I liked about that. It surprised me.
And you know what I like as a backup plan? When I'm away, I phone Cameron.
Cameron's your backup?
I had to do that a couple of years ago. And I had to talk him through.
That's why you never leave. You don't go anywhere.
I had to talk him through exactly how the system works. We should probably do a thing about driving around and figuring out everybody else's system, just in case there's an
Help each other out.
An incident, yeah. I guess with FaceTime or Zoom nowadays, you can probably figure it out, or maybe not me particularly with the
How Zoom's gone
how
tonight?
Zoom's gone tonight, but
Cameron, we have children.
that's right.
Yeah, kids will do
Yep.
their tech.
All right, challenges. No, we already did
Oh,
that.
we did that one. Okay.
Advice for others when setting up a water system.
Try anything once.
Try anything once.
Yeah, don't be afraid to fail. Right? Like, it's not just because somebody's got one done one way doesn't mean it has to be done that way. You can try it and adapt it to your likes and wants and needs, and change it and try it, and don't go all in, maybe, right? Like, save some budget for trying to change something, I guess, eh?
I'm all about using the junk I have.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
Or other people's when you get a text,
Yeah.
you got to use for these.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying about that tank. Like, we have one of the ones I quickly set up was a 2,000 gallon tank on the back of an old flat deck there. But the tank was in the bush, and it had it, because the reason it was in there is it had a big bloody crack in it. So I just flipped the tank upside down, so the crack was to the top. And so instead of getting 2,000 gallons, I'm getting 1,800.
Yeah.
You know, using crap that's in your bush, or everybody's got something around it somebody can find. And then just like always having a backup system, like Billy said, either be a 3/4 inch pump or 2-inch pump, or like the wind turbine thing. Like, that's just backups is.
Or the ability to change where you're watering.
Yeah.
Like if you have to, oh, shit, I gotta take my cows home now.
Or, yeah,
Go back to the reliable source until you get that one fixed.
Yeah.
That helps, like, I guess I have that advantage. It's only a mile and a half home. Like for the most part.
right. And I guess with, look for funding,
Look for funding.
right? Because there's money there, why not, right? I
There,
can't say much. I, you know, I like it, when I get an idea, I like to not sit on my hands. I like to get out and do it. And then I don't, you know, if I think about it on Tuesday, it'll probably be done by Wednesday because I got zero patience. But everybody tells you, I'll like to say that I got lots of patience, but I don't. I'll probably be done within a day or two. So I got to wait and slow down and plan ahead, which I'm horrible at, is planning ahead. But need to plan ahead, get some funding, and do it. If I could get money for something I did 3 years ago so I can catch up, it'd be kind of nice, but I know that's not how it works.
I don't know if that's how it works, but speaking of funding, we're just about an hour here. Should we let Ryan talk a little bit here about the funding stuff?
Yep,
That'd be super.
that's a good segue.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Bill. Hey, Ryan, do you just want to share your screen then, or how do you want to, do you have a couple slides? Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Okay, there you go. You should be good to go. Yep, I can see it.
So, all right. Well, thanks, Cam and Mike, for hosting, and thanks, Bill and Chris, for sharing. I got about 10 slides here. I've feeling pretty optimistic this morning, so I threw this one together. I think a lot of the point around the water system talk is to improve grazing. Mike alluded to that. So grazing can do a lot of good things for the landscape and agriculture, and that's the intent of a lot of programs I'm going to speak to. But we're in a beautiful position where we get to be the ones that help you and support your efforts towards improved grazing and that stuff. And water systems are obviously a big key part of that. So I'm going to speak to a couple programs, but again, just want to hit about the intent behind the programs. This statement's probably true across the planet. We're probably sitting around the halfway mark. We've lost probably half of the carbon in our soil since we started cultivating the European immigration settlement. And what the trend has done is taken native and healthy soil and turned it into more of a degraded soil, and that's not good for anybody. So grazing is really one way we can reverse that trend and continue to profit quite healthily. So here's a couple shots that show some of the research that's come out, just again trying to tie grazing to improved soil carbon and improved AH layer. And AH layer is really the dead material on the surface that's waiting to be incorporated and converted into soil organic matter. So this is just some of the research that's starting to come out and show that through higher levels of managed grazing, you can really push the soil carbon and the AH layers up. And if you look at the slide on the right, you can actually see that under like a zero rest scenario, you can actually deplete carbon from your soil. So we really want to move away from that continuous grazing and move into a higher form of grazing, higher management. And that requires, as been said earlier tonight, more watering infrastructure so we can move those cattle around our pastures. I'm not going to dwell on this, but you've probably all seen these slides. We want healthy pastures, and we need watering points at lots of places across our ranches to accommodate frequent moves and long rest periods. Here's just a shot of my farm. Some of these little squares I move, they're only 2.5 acres, and I can move these cattle 3 and 4 times a day. And it's like a buffet effect. Every time you move cattle, they want to gorge again. They get into some fresh pasture, they eat no matter how many times they've ate that day. And when you can time that with the highest brick content in your grasses, you really maximize the weight gain potential. And I graze yearlings, so that's my big focus is weight gains. So just for example, that green circle represents a very fixed water station. And I have 1,000 feet of that water line that Bill was talking about, and I think Chris maybe mentioned it too. It's on the surface, and I drag it back and forth north to south from that watering station to really have a, you know, watering trough every 400 or 500 feet when I'm cross fencing. All those little yellow lines are wires. Yeah, they mentioned the plow. I thought I'd throw this in here. I actually pulled this from a presentation as you guys were talking, because I put this in a different meeting presentation. Some municipalities really get upset about this, but others don't. So that plow is very effective, and there's a shot of it going across the municipal road. These are some of the other pieces of infrastructure that we at the district provide. It seems like it's a bit of a niche market that nobody else was providing these. So that brass saddle can couple onto that 1.5-inch pipe. The valve in the middle is a quick release valve, and the fitting on the very right is the kind of inset. So you can put a water station on anywhere along that plastic water line that you've buried, and it makes it very user-friendly to divide pastures and put those water systems in place. Maybe just one last one about my place. I've moved troughs a lot for 15 years. And when I was younger and more energetic, I would move troughs almost every time the cattle moved. And now I've kind of gone to committing to these more fixed stations. So I'm just in the point of installing some of these hardened sites with 12-foot line tire and filled with concrete. And I picked these up for about $750. So I think they're fairly cost effective. As far as I've wrecked a lot of those blue troughs that we were seeing there in Chris's presentation, maybe in Bill's as well. You guys were talking about the benefits too. So here's a shot. Like, we don't want to do this. We don't want to see this. We talked about the impact to the dugout. I think I've read somewhere that you lose about 5% of the dugout's effectiveness a year when you leave access, wide range access. Not to mention the livestock performance suffers and whatnot. So we've got funding to support this, to fence these out and to get these water systems in place. So we really want to do that. The GROW program, which is one of the ones that does fund water systems, the main priority of that program is water quality. So to keep livestock out of, especially systems like this, creeks, where you're not doing any favors for water quality, and you're really reducing the primary production around that riparian zone. And there's really no real strong benefits that come from this practice. So this one here, I pulled this one up the other day. If this isn't an argument for investing in a winter watering system, I don't know what would be. This was actually from about 20 years ago now, early 2000s. We were in the midst of doing a bunch of promotion, just like we are tonight, talking about a program. And this happened in Alberta, and the fellow lost 40 or 50 head. So, there is still lots to talk about this. When I showed this slide, actually, guys were talking about how they still opened the dugout, and there was still some cattle that actually got in. And so this is still a somewhat of a common occurrence, but with our funding, the winter watering straight out of a dugout maybe shouldn't be considered a very good risk potential opportunity there, whatever you want to say. I don't like showing that picture very long when we get it out of there. There's just an example of a riparian area in the image, and the producer decided to fence it off. And we can actually, above the funding that goes into funding water systems alone, we can actually incentivize the protection of riparian areas. So this fellow is going to put a water system in. He's going to pull water out of the little Saskatchewan River there, bring it outside that yellow line that represents the boundary fence, and we'll pay that producer, nearly $5,500 a year to leave livestock out of that somewhat fragile headwaters of the little Saskatchewan River. So above and beyond the funding to help you buy infrastructure, there's now programs that will recognize the benefit to water quality and riparian areas and biodiversity and habitat quality, and will actually pay you on an annual basis to kind of reduce the use or exclude livestock from those fragile environments. So the Grazing Forward program is, again, another one that goes beyond infrastructure and is actually rewarding producers for the practice of intensive grazing management. So if some of you on the call tonight are not requiring infrastructure and already are grazing at a really high level, phone us. We want to talk to you guys and we want to get you enrolled in a program that would recognize those extra efforts and benefits of high impact grazing. I'll step back and talk about infrastructure here for a second. So there are several programs right now that will fund to a fairly generous level the infrastructure required, and were talked about by Chris and by Bill. So 85% of the project cost, up to a maximum of 13,000 per quarter is quite reasonably is something you can kind of figure on. That's funding for stationary or mobile water systems. That includes your fencing and stuff like that, but I think we want to focus on water systems tonight. It does require you to provide a rotational grazing plan. So just this whole program is premised on improving your rotational grazing ability to rotationally graze. So understanding that water infrastructure is a key component of that. We want to see how you plan to improve your rotational grazing, and you do that through showing us a rotational grazing plan. But after that, there's really no requirements, and an 85% funding threshold. So 15% landowner, which is obviously fairly easy to achieve with any kind of effort involved in setting up or developing that watering system, and then the 85% is the funding. So I would almost challenge Bill with his alley comment, like with the funding levels the way they are today, it is almost probably cheaper to run the water line out and not make those cattle walk back to a central water point. But I mean, each situation is obviously going to be different, so you got to consider that. But the funding is fairly rich right now, so having factor that all in. Please call us and we can have a conversation and look at what program opportunities there are for you. There, short and sweet. I mean, there are lots of programs, but I want to really drive home that you have an idea, phone us. We'll help you figure out which funding pot is best suited for you. And yeah, that's where I'll leave it, and I'll just take questions.
Yep. Questions, anyone for Brian? Thanks a lot. That was excellent.
Yeah.
In the chat, or just unmute and ask away. This is your chance.
Brian,
go ahead.
Sorry, Ryan, I had one there. One thing I'm big on, or bad on, or whatever you want to call it, is I'm absolutely horrible with paperwork, and I cannot stand, and it'll deter me from doing a project because I have to do paperwork. And I can only ask my wife to do so much when she's got a full-time job, and she's good at it, but yeah, I can only ask her to do so much. One thing I did learn this spring was there's help me out here, is it the letter of intent or the, what is it, Ryan, with you guys? You sign up with some projects there? Expression of interest. That's good there too. So I like that idea. That sure, instead of takes out the guesswork of what program it should be on, is the letter of expression there, or which is whatever you called it. But anyways, the paperwork beyond that, is there some way to make it easier for a dip like me? Like just make it simpler, or whatever, like the least amount of paperwork possible. I'd pay somebody to do my paperwork because I hate it that much.
Yeah, the expression of interest form has really come around because there are 4 or 5 different funding opportunities. And so we didn't really want to put an application form out for each. With Grow and with Alice, those are 2 fairly big programs we offer. We just take your details and we kind of go from there. So there really isn't an application beyond that letter or the expression of interest form. With the PWCP program, this is the big federal one that Mike had spoke about at the beginning of the session. So it does have an application form, but it's pretty small, pretty short. I mean, if that's what's holding you back, come have a coffee with us someday and we'll help you fill that out in the office. And it won't take very long. That'd
be terrific. Yeah, I've got lots of existing or new ideas, and yeah, that's by far my biggest hang up is the paperwork side of things.
I think maybe we should all just go up there at once and have a group paperwork session.
Couple of questions.
Ryan, if there's like 4 or 5 of us come up.
Sure.
Yep. Bring a case of beer. Couple of questions in the chat, Ryan. What kind of hose did you use for moving your troughs around on your own farm?
So I buried that 1.5-inch high density poly pipe all across my farm. And then I just moved the troughs to those stations, those little water stations. There's only one place on my farm where I have it above ground, and I actually pull it with my quad back and forth from one side of the quarter to the other. The rest of it is all buried, fixed, and I moved the troughs to those spots.
Yeah.
I would
so,
just drive, yeah.
so that when you did use an above ground hose, I think that's what Sarah's asking, or
Oh, so I just like Chris had mentioned, I use a couple
Yeah.
cam lock fittings on some fire hose, like some lay flat hose to get it
Okay.
out of the watering station. Then I cam lock it to my rigid hose and it runs in a shelter belt row, so it's kind of protected from the cattle. And then I use those fittings that I showed at every interval just to tie into the pipe or
Right.
tie into the trough.
so just that flat blue
Lay
hose?
flat, yeah.
Lay
Yeah.
flat stuff? Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I come out of the ground with it and then I run it across my watering station so I can wrap that up and move it away. Like when I'm using the watering station as its water spot and the cattle are in there, I just roll the lay flat up and throw it off.
Okay, good. And question, is there funding to clean out an existing dugout just to kind of improve it as a watering source?
Yes. So there was through the Ag Action Program, it was kind of wrapped up, like it wraps up this March. The application period was long ago. That funding should come back in the form of a new program starting this spring. None of the funding we have is really meant for cleaning out dugouts. So I hesitate to say there is currently funding for it. There was a big rush for it in 21 when it was so dry. And then the program ended this March 2023, but the intake was way back like last January.
Okay.
So there isn't currently funding for cleaning out dugouts.
Okay, but maybe stay in touch with you. There could be.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, for sure. As we know, we can send out the word if people get a hold of me, and I'll put a list of people on a little whiteboard that want that kind of funding. And then when it gets announced, I can make those connections.
Okay, sounds good. Anybody else with a question?
I see one in there about the fencing program. Any riparian area, be it wetland, slough, fence, like creek, doesn't matter, lake, you can get funding to, fence around marginal sensitive areas due to excess water.
Okay, good.
I see that, Paul. I'll take your name down there. That program that was available, I've been told there should be an announcement within the month, but that's the province. So maybe add another month to that, just because sometimes they get slowed up.
All right, well, last chance for a question for the boys.
Like, I guess if there's no questions, Michael, there's next week.
Right. Next week is on fencing, I believe.
Next week's on fencing. Yeah, we're gonna have Trent, Alexander, and Sean Anderson come talk, and hopefully the IT guy gets his stuff together here. So I apologize for that again.
Oh, I think it worked out quite well. That was good information. So appreciate everyone coming out tonight. Thanks a lot, Cameron, Chris, and Bill, and Ryan. And we'll probably see a lot of you next week, same time. I'll be sending out an email with the Zoom link. Maybe just a quick heads up. No need to contact me to register. We'll maybe change that. Just hit the Zoom link 7:30 next Monday, and we'll do this again and talk about fencing.
Yeah, well, thank you guys very much. Thanks for everyone for showing up.
Yep.
Reach out to Ryan or your watershed district.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Take advantage of the money It's the watershed, ducks, Manitoba Habitat Heritage. There's more money available for doing good things on your farm than there ever has been. So, and now's the time to do it. Make a plan, get it in place for this spring.